Meeting and update. I'm Kathy Cahill, Associate Dean for Accessibility and Usability and Disability Services. And welcome you all, and thank you for coming to get some more information about where we're at in the process of the NAD MIT Captioning Agreement. Wanted to introduce a couple of people who are involved in the presentation today or who will be involved behind the scenes. So Anthony Moriello is an attorney in the Office of General Counsel who will be speaking about the agreement and about where we're at in the process. So thank you for being here, Anthony. And I also wanted to introduce Brianna Giacoppi. Brianna is in Disability and Access Services, and she is going to be one of the people who will be responding to the accessibility requests from members of the public, and will potentially be communicating with you or your staff about some of these requests. So Brianna, I don't know if you're here, but if you are, just give a quick shout out and say hi.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Just hello. If you have any questions, you may have already heard from me briefly. There are a couple different departments we've talked to, but I'm always here and accessible by email, so feel free to reach out. Thank you, Kath.
Great, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, who's going to talk about the agreement, and then I will come back at the end to talk about where we're at in the process and also about what kinds of resources we have, and to answer questions and get feedback from you about how it's going, any issues you have with vendors. And if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will make sure we cover them today. So Anthony, it is yours.
Thank you, Kathy, and hi everyone. I think that we have presented on this topic and have provided some background on the litigation that ultimately led to this settlement. So I'm not going to go into all of that background here. Also for the reason that Kathy just mentioned, which is that we hope to focus primarily on giving folks an update on where things stand and to get some feedback from all of you as to how we envision the request process playing out going forward. But just as a brief upshot, this settlement was the result of a litigation that lasted for about 5 years. And the NAD and the named plaintiffs in the case, in essence, were seeking under the federal anti-discrimination laws that apply to places of public accommodation and federally funded institutions, seeking to have MIT caption all of the content that we have on our public-facing web pages and on all of the pages that are public and that are operated by MIT affiliates, really without any limitation as to who those affiliates might be and their actual relationship to MIT, employee status or student status or mere affiliate status, and without really any limitation to when that content was posted. So this agreement was the outcome of years of simultaneous settlement conversations as we were proceeding with the case. And the way that I view the settlement is that there's the what we have to caption, and then there's the when we have to caption things by. And if you've had the chance to take a look at our FAQs on the accessibility site that we'll mention later, you'll see that we've roughly broken down some of the FAQs into scope questions and timeline questions to give folks a sense for how those issues break down. But the first slide, Kathy, if you could actually just go back one slide, really gets to the what question, the what has to be captioned under the settlement. And there are 3 main buckets of content that need to be captioned. The first bucket is content created or developed by our faculty and staff as part of their MIT roles and MIT work. That's then posted to a public MIT website or a third-party platform that we operate, right? And so I think most common example of that would be a YouTube channel. I'm not sure how many folks use Vimeo, but a Vimeo channel, you know, a DLC social media account. That's what we mean when we talk about third-party platforms, right? So not just public-facing web pages, proper web pages, but also any public channels or platforms that we operate. The second bucket is similar to the first, but it's content created or developed by a sponsored student group as part of their mission that's posted to a public web page or a third-party platform. Sponsored student group is sort of a defined term by the ASA. And it's really those student groups that have more of a direct relationship with DLCs and are often funded in whole or in part by DLCs. So that's why they are included in the captioning requirements. But as we'll discuss later, you know, non-sponsored student groups are not included. And then the third bucket has to do with live streamed content. And this bucket relates only to content that is live streamed publicly by the Institute Events office. Okay, Kathy, next slide, please. So that was the what slide, and now we're turning to the when slide, the timeline slide. And the way that we have the segment broken down is that it differentiates between new content and existing content. And new content under the agreement is any content that falls sort of in that last slide that is posted to a public web page or a public third-party platform on or after September 19, 2020. So everything that we are putting up now, right, on those public web pages that falls into those buckets would be considered new content under the agreement. And that content needs to be captioned upon posting. Existing content is everything that was posted before September 19, 2020. And there's actually a further differentiation between content that was posted between January 1, 19 and September 19, 2020, and content that was posted prior to January 1, 2019. So for the first, let's call it subgroup, content that was posted between January 1, 19 and September 19, 2020, we have an obligation to go out and find that content and to caption it by July 21 of this year. So that's 1 year from when the NAD agreement was made effective by the court. If in the meantime, we receive a public request through the new process that we've set up and that we'll elaborate on later, we have an obligation to caption that content within 7 business days of receiving their request. So there's sort of two deadlines. The outside deadline is we have to go out and find it all by July 21 of this year and caption it automatically. And if in the meantime we get a public request, then we have to act on that request within 7 business days. And I say act on it because we can caption it, or we can elect to put it behind a touchstone, take it down after we've done sort of a good faith analysis as to whether we're able to caption that content. As to content that was posted prior to January 1st, 2019, we don't have an obligation to go out and find that automatically and caption it, but if we receive a request through the new process that we've set up, then we have 7 business days to either caption it, or after a good faith analysis of whether we can caption and decide to take it down or put it behind a touchstone or otherwise remove it from public view. Then the last point here has to do with recordings of live streamed events. On the one hand, these are recorded videos just like everything else that we put online in recorded form, but we get a little more wiggle room here in terms of our timing. So if we live stream something today, let's say, and we put it up tomorrow, we don't actually have to caption that upon posting. We get a little bit of a buffer, and we have 7 business days to caption that that previously live streamed content, if that makes sense. Next slide, please, Kathy. There are some exceptions to the captioning requirement, and as I'll discuss later, these same exceptions apply to our obligation also to add a link to the new central accessibility site. And the first exception is that the settlement relates to public-facing content that's available to the general public. So if there's content that's available only internally to our staff, via Dropbox, or other internal file sharing systems, then that's not within the scope of this agreement. Any content that's created by our staff or faculty sort of outside of their work for MIT, this doesn't happen a lot, but I know some faculty have MIT.edu pages on which they post things that really aren't related to their research, but maybe they're a musician and as a hobbyist musician, and they post their videos of them playing instruments and things like that. That kind of stuff exists. It's just not within the scope of the agreement. Content on web pages that's being used for student courses, as we know, there is a sort of separate accommodations process that applies to content that is being used for our courses for enrolled students. So that process will continue to apply for that content. And then there's sort of a list here. I won't go into all of these details, but there's sort of a list of other sites where if the content list is on that site, it's also excluded from the settlement. And if folks want to study this more closely, we have this available on on the FAQs on the accessibility website. And then of course, because one of our main goals was to make this as complicated as possible, there's sort of an exception to the exception, and that's in this last bullet. If there's content that is on one of these excluded pages that is then pulled and reposted to a covered page, then it needs to be captioned once it's posted to the covered page. So a frequent example that we've heard about is, an individual student may create content and post it to a website that is operated by a non-sponsored student group. So for so long as that video lives on that website, it's not covered. But then a particular department may want to feature the student's video, and will take that video and put it on the department's formal public-facing webpage. Once that happens, it becomes covered by the agreement, the same way a video would be covered if the department had posted on its own webpage from the beginning. Next slide, please, Kathy. Apart from the captioning obligations, we have to also add accessibility links to all of our public web pages and third-party platforms and channels. And a example of what that accessibility link would look like is here in a screenshot on this slide. This comes from the link that I believe still exists. Kathy, correct me if I'm wrong, and if this is now taken down since we put the new accessibility site up. But this is what at least used to be on the MIT homepage. And what this link is supposed to direct to is to the new accessibility page that we have set up and that has been live since July of last year. And that's where you can find things like FAQs, technical guidance, trainings on how to caption, finding vendors and the like. We have to add the accessibility link to our covered web pages by October. We had to, excuse me, it's past tense. We had to add those links to our covered web pages by October 19th of 2020. Of course, we have a continuing obligation to the extent that we find websites that should have this link but do not, to add the link to those websites. And if anyone has any questions about this issue, we have a specific set of FAQs dealing with this accessibility link requirement on the FAQ portion of the accessibility page. And as I previewed, same exclusions apply to the accessibility link that apply to the captioning requirement. So, the websites of individual students or FSILGs or websites that are not open and available to the public, et cetera. Kathy, can you go to the next slide, please? So this is sort of a nifty timeline slide that we've created so that folks can have a visual of what this all means. And this slide sort of breaks down new content versus old content, and existing content, and the deadlines by which the different kinds of content need to be captioned. I won't sort of go through it all again, but as you can see, the sort of long-term priority, starting with the bottom left, is sort of inventorying content that is not the newer kind of content, the stuff that we don't have to caption affirmatively, but that we just need to know that it's there. And so once we get a request from a member of the public, we're able to caption it upon request. Sort of the shorter term priority was to inventory and to continue inventorying all the content that was posted between January 1, 2019 and September 19 of 2020. That's the content for which we have an obligation to go out and caption it by July of this year. Or if we get a request, in the meantime, we have 7 business days to act on that request. And then, the more immediate priority when we created this timeline a couple months ago, and it's sort of continuing immediate priority, is to caption upon posting any new content, and to make sure that we have the accessibility link on all of the web pages and channels that require the accessibility link. Yeah, next slide, please, Kathy. So in terms of what the liaisons can help us with in meeting these timelines going forward, as part of the accessibility link requirement, we're really asking for help in locating all the covered web pages in your respective DLCs. All the public-facing web pages, all the public-facing and MIT-operated channels, YouTube channels, social media platforms, et cetera, and to add the accessibility link to those locations. If there is a covered web page or a channel that is missing this link, and we receive a request by a member of the public asking us to add the link, then there is sort of a remedial mechanism in the settlement for doing that. We have to add the link within 20 business days of the request. But if we do in the meantime identify any pages that should have this link, then we should add it. And it's really just a link to the main accessibility site that we've created. And next page, please. As for the existing content, this is going to require a little bit more, I think, work on all of our parts, because we have to go out and do an inventory of all of the covered web pages where we currently have content and where that content was posted between 1/1/19 and 9/19/20. And we have to, caption that content. So I know some DLCs are, captioning themselves using some of the trainings and resources that are available, on the accessibility webpage, and working with Kathy and Kathleen and folks in DAS. And others have engaged outside vendors to assist with captioning. Whichever way works best for your DLC, we just need to go ahead and identify all of this content and caption it through one or both of those mechanisms by this outside date of July 21 of this year. And again, if we get a request in the meantime, then we have 7 business days to act on that. Next slide, please, Kathy.
So
I'm turning it back over to you, right? Okay.
Right, but I think I might stop here and just check the chat to see if people have any questions. Except I can't find the chat. Here it is, sorry. Okay. So if there's any questions so far, feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we'd be glad to answer them for you. Looks like we're good so far. Okay. If things come up, please feel free to type in the chat. I'm going to reshare my screen and continue with the presentation. Okay. So as Anthony said, we have a central accessibility website and captioning website that went live in July of last year. And this is it right here. So it currently has captioning information for everybody. It describes the MIT NAD agreement. There's a whole bunch of information about how to either caption videos yourself or information about the third-party vendors that are preferred vendors for MIT. We also have some information in any of these sessions that we've done for training. We've actually collected them and included some of the slideshows in this listing of training resources. So you can get more information here. And then if you have questions yourself about the agreement, what's required, some of the things that Anthony went over, we have a frequently asked questions section that deal with, they're broken down into questions about scope, timeline, captioning standards, and technical details, as well as the accessibility link and what to do if there are public requests for captioning. And I also wanted to mention, we started adding in other topics on digital accessibility besides captioning, because we really want this to be a full service accessibility site. So our team is slowly building out this site so we can add more information that'll be helpful about general digital accessibility and not just about captioning. So let me just go back to the slides. Okay. So one of the things, as Anthony mentioned, that started in October was the centralized mechanism for any reports of accessibility concerns, whether it's a video that needs to be captioned or whether there's an accessibility related problem in using a certain website or web page. So I just wanted to go over what you might be able to expect if someone makes a a request like this. So when there's a captioning request, Brianna or another member of our team in Disability and Access Services would email you with information about the video web page, or if it's a podcast, it might be an audio URL, the name of it, and what the deadline is for it to be captioned by. And then you as the liaison will need to contact the file owner in your department, whether that's a different group or some other professors or a lab perhaps, to communicate that that request has been made, and make sure that they know about the deadlines, which are 7 business days from the date of the original request. And then we need to know from you that you've let your file owner, video owner know about this request, and that you will also let us know when it's complete. And then our team will reach out and let the requester know when the repaired caption transcribe file is ready for the person to use. Now, when it's something different like an accessibility link request, I believe there is more time involved in that, in being able to remediate that issue. Anthony, am I right about that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So there's more time involved in that. And then as far as any accessibility concerns that, that someone writes in with, let's say they are a user of a screen reading program to listen to the text on the screen, and maybe they're having difficulty navigating it. That is a little bit more of a back and forth. There's no deadline by which that has to be remediated. It's mostly trying to find out from the user where they're encountering problems. And then our team, which also works on digital accessibility, can even get involved to some extent to try to help mediate between the requester and the department about maybe what needs to be done to fix that problem. And also, just to let you know, I'm sure you're curious about what kinds of requests we've been getting, and I'm certainly surprised myself. So since the link went live in October, we've had about 80 requests, many of which were spam or unintelligible. So some of them are just spam. There's no actual real request. There might just be some random email addresses or random web URLs that are not related to MIT at all. So unless the person has a particular request that we can discern, we don't write back to them. 26 of these, however, were non-disability related requests. So sometimes what happens is, because this accessibility link lands on, it's at the bottom of every page, or is supposed to be. If a person is having a problem utilizing that page or that website, then that means that sometimes they click on the accessibility link and they post their question there, even though it is not really an issue with accessibility. So some of those we funnel to a department. Like if it's a particular site, I know that there was one in, for a CSAIL data set, and some of the people trying to obtain the data set were encountering problems getting to it. So we just tried to pass on the information to that department about what the issues were. And then there were 21 reports of missing accessibility links, but the information either didn't provide us with a URL, or else the URL was not an MIT website, or it might have even included an email address. So it's very possible these were bots, or there were just people who were just kind of randomly playing around. We don't really know. So up to this point, we have actually had no legitimate captioning requests thus far. So I think this also speaks to the fact that MIT was already well on its way to getting a lot of videos captioned. And so that many of the videos that are on public websites are already captioned, and perhaps the ones that were not were taken down. So I'm going to stop there because I think there are some comments, and I just wanted to see what people are saying. Okay. So Paul had a question. If I recorded a seminar and someone within MIT wants to watch it, can I just put it in a Dropbox without captioning it? Yes, Paul. So if this is something you're not planning to post on one of your public websites for your department, you can put it in a Dropbox and share it with a particular person and not caption it. Let's see. Jennifer asks, as this was an outside request settlement, the focus is on what's accessible to the public. Do I have that correct? Thereby, if we put something behind Touchstone, we are covered. Of course, best practice would dictate we would likely want to caption internal videos too, I am assuming. Anthony, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think this question seems similar to Paul's question, and yes, I mean the answer to the specific question about private content is that it's not covered by the settlement. But as Jennifer suggests, I mean, best practice would be to, at a minimum, be mindful of, you know, how many folks are sharing it with, the likelihood that anybody in the audience might need captions, even if they are not members of the public. I mean, we have colleagues who require captions, we have students who require captions. So I think even in cases where the settlement would not specifically require that we caption, I would just encourage that we take a stop and think approach and consider whether captions would be helpful and possible. But yes, I mean, strictly speaking, this would not be covered by the settlement itself.
Thank you. And Lacey asks, if a Dropbox link to a recorded seminar is shared with event attendees only, does that video need captioning? And again, because that is not a public video, it's fine to share it that way. It's also good to think about perhaps the future use of some of these videos. And what I mean by that is, if you think down the road that you might want to publish it publicly, then it's not a bad idea to think about getting it captioned and posting it then. But yes, if you're only planning on sharing it with the attendees of an event, according to this agreement, you would not have to caption it. And Jennifer asks, when I have uploaded captions to YouTube that I generate via 3Play, I will sometimes see a little CC icon noting I have uploaded captions. But I don't believe that CC appears if I go in and edit the YouTube captions. How do we tell if YouTube videos meet the requirement other than viewing the video and captions in their entirety for accuracy? That's a very good question, because generally 3Play is considered an industry standard, so that even though there might be mistakes in the captions, it has a high rate of accuracy. So that's something to consider. If you go in and you're sort of hand editing the auto captions on a YouTube video, my experience is that once you enable those YouTube auto captions and you've edited them, that the CC icon will appear after that. But generally, if you have used an outside captioning service, you can be fairly confident that the level of accuracy is high. And Anthony, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that. Okay, great. Vivian says, as long as you publish the subtitles, the CC will appear. And Alfredo says, as far as I'm concerned, automatically generated YouTube videos do not apply as NAD compliant. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, Alfredo. They do not contain periods, commas, and other punctuation. They often get names wrong, proper names wrong. So while they're a very good start and that you can actually take those auto captions and edit them, they will not meet the NAD requirements as they are. So it's important to remember that. You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to go back and share my screen. I'm almost done. Actually, I'm not going to share my screen because when I do that, I can't see people's chats. So we want to know from you how things are going. As far as any MIT preferred vendors, so 3Play Media, ACS Captions, Caption First, automatic sync captioning. Those are the 4 preferred vendors that we're using. And if you are, if you have used their services, if you're satisfied with their services, are there things you would like to see addressed? And the other thing is, I do know back in November and December, a couple of staff members let me know that they had submitted some short videos to 3Play Media for fast turnaround, like 4 to 8 hour turnaround, and that wasn't happening. So I think one of the issues is that 3Play Media requires, they put the work out to contract vendors who are transcriptionists, and they can pick up a job or not, and they can elect not to. And in some cases, they weren't picking up some of these fast turnaround jobs. And so the customer was left waiting and didn't even know that, that what they had submitted was going to be late. And it took a while for them to have a back and forth with 3Play Media and find out that their videos were not being picked up for captioning in that short amount of time. So they actually ended up going to some other provider for the short turnaround captioning because they felt like they couldn't rely on 3Play. I spoke to 3Play about that, and they did say that they're working on getting more captionists, but how they convinced the captionists to take up some of those short turnaround jobs, I'm not sure. Vivian says, we've been using 3Play exclusively and have found their quality wildly irregular. Sometimes they are great and I need to correct only 1 or 2 things. Sometimes they are terrible and I have to make multiple corrections per paragraph. Also had the timing problem a couple of times, you already mentioned, Kathy. You know, that's good to know, Vivian, about the turnaround as well as the accuracy, because 3Play really promotes themselves as being fairly accurate. So if anyone else is running into accuracy issues like that, please let me know, and I'm going to address it with the customer service manager that we have assigned at MIT.
If I were to share, oh, we're going to do it to the chat?
Oh.
All the sharing happened to the chat, right?
Say that again?
All the sharing will happen to the chat?
That's okay. You can go ahead and talk. It's fine.
Oh, okay, then. So the experience that we had in the Chemi department was with AST, the company that does the transcribes.
Yep.
And at first we're doing it like, yeah, let's just go and do it ourselves using the Amara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, using the Amara. Then I was like, Cadet is much more intuitive, although the tutorials are hard to find. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, let's go with Cadet. But we had 84 videos to transcribe. So right. we're running on a little tight schedule here because it's going to take a lot of time. And some of these videos are like an hour seminar, so symposiums. So we went on with AST, and they provide us with not only SRT files that we can easily upload into the YouTube, but many other options in case that we had difficulties with that. And all our videos have been already transcribed. It took them like about a week to come back to us. And with all of them, and every time that one video was transcribed, we received an email saying, hey, this video has been transcribed, this video has been transcribed, all the way to all of them. So now all we have to do at this point is to take those, extract those SRT files and go to each individual YouTube video and uploading them as well. Mm-hmm. That's what next in our agenda. And so far the experience with them have been really, really good. Like they're very fast at coming back to us. The quality of the transcription, well, we only check like 3 or 4 because again, 84 videos, that's quite a lot. But we even went to the hassle of checking one video with the YouTube automatically generated script and then uploading the SRT. And you can see, just as you mentioned before, how different punctuations and how if the speaker said ins, institutions, the automatically generated ins, institution, but all that is cleaned up with the transcript service. So I think that was pretty good.
That's good to hear. Thanks, Alfredo. It's good to hear about good service too.
Work well.
Paul says, you've had a problem getting 3Play to respond to emails or phone calls. I'm working with ACS about live captioning a seminar this Friday, and they've been very responsive, even putting me through a little training. We'll see how it goes on Friday. Yeah, let us know, Paul. I'd be curious. I'm sorry to hear about 3Play and the lack of a response. I mean, obviously, because of the pandemic, all of these companies are very busy and they're snowed with work. But considering that 3Play was started by a bunch of MIT graduates, they've always tried to play that up as a reason for us to feel like we can rely on them. And I know there are people who don't always feel like they're getting the response that they need to. And Jennifer Donovan also said, we have also gotten slow customer service response from 3Play. Okay. That stuff's good to know because I'm planning on talking with their customer service manager about it, and appreciate all this feedback. It's very good. Okay. So let me just quickly go back. I'm almost done with slides anyway, so. Allison also says, MIT Video Productions is excellent to work with. Turnaround is fast and accurate. That's good to know too. Okay. So right now you are all in the process of retroactively captioning or figuring out what videos need to be captioned before July 21 of 2021. So a lot of that is still sort of collecting information and finding out, well, as Anthony said, doing inventory of the videos that are available on your site. Stephanie says her group, Resource Development, has been using NCI for live captioning and has been very happy with them. I think that's, am I right, Stephanie? That's National Captioning Institute?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I've heard they do really good work too, because I remember Brielle mentioned them as well. We've been increasingly using Rev for post-production work. I feel that their quality is improved. Yeah, Rev declined to submit a rev.com, which is about, I believe it's 24-hour turnaround and about $1.25 a minute. So a lot of people use Rev. They declined to submit a proposal to be an MIT preferred vendor, which is why we don't have them on our list. But there are a number of departments that use them. And there are a number of departments who have also turned to them when 3Play wasn't able to come through. And they felt that they were able to get better results through Rev. So I'm just mentioning that since they are not a preferred provider, but everyone does what they need to do to get their work done. Okay, thanks, Stephanie, for that. So any other questions, please let us know. Again, the email address is das-access, ACCESS @mit.edu. Allison said, I believe MIT works with Rev for captioning, but could be wrong. They will also bill your cost object directly. That would be good to know because my impression, oh, you meant MIT Video Productions? I see. So Allison, do you mean that MIT Video Productions works with rev.com to outsource the captioning?
Hi, yes, as far as I know,
Okay.
I believe MVP sort of contracts out their captioning to Rev. I could be wrong about that, but I work with them for all of my videos. They do any post-production as well as captioning. They'll edit your video. And for my part, if I'm working with them for any of the background tech, you know, I generally just put into the order any of the post-production editing that I need as well as the captioning, and the turnaround time is really fast, and they will do a swift turnaround, and the customer service is excellent.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Vivian asked, I saw the Zoom live captioning beta and was very impressed by its quality. All artificial intelligence. I think it's otter.ai, if I remember correctly. That's the engine. They had said they would be available in higher ed accounts by the end of 2020, but I haven't seen anything yet. I am going to need to check with IS&T, Vivian, because I believe if we're going to incorporate something like Otter AI or one of the other automatic captioning tools, it has to do with the license and what IS&T agreed to when they signed the agreement with Zoom. So I can find out and update you on that. I can let everybody know because I've also heard good things about it from colleagues at other universities. And I think that also might be an easier way to obtain captioning. I mean, obviously, there are going to be times you want it as accurate as possible, and maybe AI won't provide that for you, but it also might reduce everything by a step if you can do it, order captioning directly within Zoom. So I can find out about that and let everybody know. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right. Mary said, Open Learning has had good experience with 3Play Media, but we have had active accounts and process set up for captioning before NAD. Also, we generally don't need a quick turnaround, and our MITx course staff are accustomed to checking captions for accuracy. Our choice. Thanks, Mary. If I remember correctly too, and tell me if I'm wrong, Open Learning also has sort of an open account with 3Play so that everything gets captioned that that you do yourselves for MITx courses. So it's a little bit different than various departments here at MIT. Hi, Mary.
Yeah, Open Learning has an account for each major production arm. So MITx and MITx Professional and OpenCourseWare. And basically it's a pipeline and an account that we've already set up. So we, you know, have a quick process in place, but we don't actually ask for a quick turnaround, which is a key factor that I'm hearing a lot of today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's those fast turnarounds that are more problematic. So, so it's good to know that. Okay, well, thank you, Anthony. Thank you for speaking. Thank you, everyone, for all of your feedback and your questions. Again, I will make sure that this this session gets posted and that we also post the slides as well. And please feel free to email us if you have more questions or other feedback that you'd like to provide to us. And thank you all for working to make MIT's videos more accessible to people with hearing disabilities and also to just people who like captions in general. We really appreciate your cooperation. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks.